Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our cyberbullying panel. I'm glad to see you all. I'm Marge Burke. I'm the school board representative to the SAU's Professional Development Committee that's the sponsor of this event tonight. Originally, this was supposed to be part of the Common Day workshop for our educators in the SAU, but ice storms and snowstorms kind of interfered with our plans, and we had a school day instead of a Common Day workshop. But we felt that this topic was so important that we needed to find another venue for some discussion about it. And so here we are with a panel for the evening. The Professional Development Committee has worked very hard putting this together, and I'd like to thank them all. They're all here doing different jobs around the room tonight. Pam Shepard, our Assistant Superintendent, is the chair of the committee, and we have Mark Willis and Matt Willey, Kathy Gerton, Melissa Muzzy, Marilyn Paul, Jeannie Ackerman, and Peggy Schaefer. I think I got them all. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. They all have some either experience or expertise around the subject of cyberbullying. And we'll start over here with Jess Potter.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jess Potter, and I'm the assistant principal here at the Weare Middle School.
I'm Karen Raymond, and I'm the assistant principal at Henniker Community School.
Good evening. Also Michael Martin, Henniker PD.
And Greg Began, Chief of Police here in Weare with 27 years in law enforcement.
My name is Barrett Christina. I'm the staff attorney for the New Hampshire School Boards Association.
I'm Dr. Vicki McCloskey, the school psychologist at Henniker and a clinical psychologist.
And I'm Tina Tangway. I'm an assistant principal at John Stark Regional High School.
And I'm Doug White. I'm superintendent of schools for SAU 24, and I have the privilege of being the facilitator of this discussion tonight. And I'd like to give you a little bit of background on how we are going to handle our discussion. The discussion will begin with pre-developed questions which will be directed to one of the panelists for a response. Others will join into the conversation at the end of the first response. The audience members can write a question on an index card and give it to one of the professional committee members, who will collect the index card and hand it to me, and I will be able to read it to the panel. The audience at home can also call in. That number is 529-7555 with your question, which will be passed on to myself. At 7:45, we will do a summary of the evening and have any closing remarks from the panel. At this time, I would like to ask the panel, any questions? Anything else that you need to know as we start our conversation tonight? Okay. What I'd like to start out with is the definition of cyberbullying. Cyberbullying consists of repeated negative comments communicated by our computers or cell phones. And I'd ask the panel if anybody else has a different definition than that.
To add to that, the Department of Health and Human Services says that cyberbullying has 4 main points. It's sending mean, vulgar, or threatening messages. It's posting sensitive, private information about another person. It's also pretending to be somebody else in order to make that person look bad. And it's also intentionally excluding someone else from an online group.
Anyone else?
I do have another thing. It's very important for you folks to realize it has to do with minor children on both sides. When it starts to have a child and an adult come into it, it's not cyberbullying anymore. It's actually, I think it's deemed cyber harassment or cyber stalking. So it's very important. It's their peers. It's children to children.
GP?
One final thing that I wanted to add was no longer can parents count on seeing the telltale physical signs of bullying, the black eye, bloody lip, torn clothes, but the damage done by cyberbullies is no less real and can be infinitely more painful.
Okay. All right. Just a note here, panelists, when you speak, make sure that you're speaking into the mic so everybody else out there in our TV audience can hear you. Okay. The next question that I have is cyberbullying something new?
Barrett? I think it probably is. We can look at the behavior, the teasing, the harassing, and whatnot, and that certainly isn't new. Certainly not on the playground or in school buildings, but the manner and the ease with which it can be done certainly is new, as we've seen an explosion of things like text messaging and email and MySpace and whatnot. It certainly makes it easier for children these days to cyberbully as opposed to traditional bullying that we may have seen just a few years ago, where, as the Chief said, the black eye or the bloody lip, things of that nature.
Anyone else on the panel?
I would just say that it's as new as those new forms of communication. And I think that it made it a lot easier for them to bully, because now it's not face-to-face. It's much easier to do it using a text, whether it be instant messaging or texting on the phone.
How does cyberbullying happen? Tina?
Well, cyberbullying can happen in many different venues, but traditionally the way that we view cyberbullying is bullying that happens via computer use, such as MySpace, Twitter sites, or with information that is transferred through some type of an electronic device, such as a cell phone.
Any additional comments on how it happens?
It can take the form of a photograph as well as words.
Yep.
So it could be a picture that's sent via cell phone.
Next question. How do I protect my child from cyberbullying? Vicky, you want to jump on that one?
There are some ways that some precautions that you can take. One would be to help your child understand the dangers and what kinds of information they should not share. And there are some websites that you can access that have some really interesting little videos that help children understand what kinds of information they should not share. And there are some handouts on the table that you can look at that let you know what kind of websites to go to find that information. The other thing is to make sure that your children know that you're going to look at their computer and monitor what they're doing. And, at some point, I think there's going to be some kind of a workshop that will help parents understand how they can access that information on their children's computers. Another thing would be to make sure that your computer is in a place that you can see, and that it's not in the child's bedroom. It's in a public place, so you can have access to it. When children set up their accounts, it's good to make sure that you know the passwords. It would be a good idea to make sure that you know some of the acronyms that children are using. Be familiar with some of the shortened versions of words that they're using so that you can read what they're sending. And I think also to make sure that your child knows that if something happens, if they feel like they've been bullied, to let you know, and that you won't withdraw their computer privileges because they've been bullied. It's okay to limit children's use of the computer, and even though they say, oh, no one else has to get off the computer at 9 o'clock, or no one else has a 1 hour limit, it's okay to do that, to limit their use. So that, what we know, I think I've read that the more time children spend on the Internet, the more likely they are to both be bullied and to become a bully. I think those are some ideas that I have. Anybody else have any others?
It's good to check the history of your child's computer. There's software that you can buy that you can monitor what sites they're going to. They may seem a little sneaky, but I know that at least checking the history and having conversations with your children once you've seen that they've been on a Facebook or a Twitter site, it's good to just communicate with them and let them know that you are aware of where they're going. And it's not really deceitful, you're just checking the computer's history.
To add to that, to be honest about it. I let them know ahead of time that the expectation is, yes, you will have computer privileges under these certain situations. I will be checking it. Another thing is to always, and you touched upon this, is to always stay one step ahead. And on May 21st at 6 p.m. here, Brian Grattan is going to be holding a computer safety night. So if you'd like to know more about how to check history and kinds of things that you can do, he'll be here to do that. So.
I think it's also important to know the signs when your child is on the computer, that if all of a sudden you're walking by and you see that they're shutting down pictures that had been up there, any text that had been up there, then that is a sign for you that there's something there that they don't think that you should see, which should raise your concern.
Any other thoughts or comments from the panel on that question?
I would just summarize what everybody has said and say, be involved with your children in every aspect of what they're doing, especially with their phones and their computers. And that's what we've all said. And that's what we need to really focus on as parents.
Thank you. Next question. At what age do children begin to experience cyberbullying? Karen?
Well, in doing some reading about this, the youngest age that I have read about is 9. We actually did surveys both at Weare Middle School and with our 5th through 8th graders at Henniker Community School. And we do definitely have information from students that our students are experiencing cyberbullying as young as 5th grade. We've got percentages of children who have either done the bullying themselves or who have been victims of bullying or postings by people about them. And the kids seem to be pretty honest in what they were in responding to the survey. So I think we've got some pretty accurate data on that.
To add to that, I was surprised to find that over 40% of our 5th graders, female 5th graders, and over 42% of our male 5th graders have received mean, vulgar, or threatening messages or images either on the computer or text messages. So that was an alarming percent to us.
And we also have percentages that are pretty high, males as well as females, which was surprising because you typically think that it's the girls who are doing the cyberbullying types of bullying and the boys are doing the playground bullying, but the boys are involved in the cyberbullying as well. Just for our youngest students, we have 36% of our males at 5th grade who have experienced some form of cyberbullying, and for our females, we have 32%. At 6th grade, we have 40% of our female students, and we have 30% of our male students. So the percentages are pretty close for both genders.
And likewise, at the Weare Middle School, just to share with you that in 6th grade, both female and male received mean, vulgar, and threatening messages. About 30% of them indicated that. In 7th grade, 55% of 7th grade females have received threatening messages, and about 35% of the males, and then similar results in 8th grade.
And I think developmentally we see the same thing at 7th grade. Actually, our 7th grade is the highest percentage, where we have 46% of the males who have received some form of cyberbullying, and we have 59% of the females. So it seems to grow as they get older in the years, and our 8th grade numbers are pretty similar, a little bit lower. We have actually quite low for the females at 8th grade. We have 9% who have received some form, and we have 8% at 8th grade. So it drops off at 8th grade for us.
If I could ask a follow-up question about the survey you did, especially with some of the 5th and 6th graders, the younger kids. Were those that had received either a threatening or mean message, did your survey ask, or were you able to ascertain if the victim knew the perpetrator, if they knew where the email was coming from? Was it a classmate? Was it anonymous?
Although we didn't ask that specific question, it's interesting that it does correlate with the percent of female and male students that talk with strangers. So if we did the percentage of how many females and males talk with people that they don't know online, and the numbers rise and fall just like similar as the graph that we mentioned before.
Mike?
I think we need to realize, I've been in law enforcement for 10 years, and it seems to be every year our younger children are getting more cell phones. It used to be teenagers. Teenagers had cell phones. Now we're going into the 5th grade. I'm a DARE officer, and I've been a DARE officer in Henry Community School for, 5 years now. My 5th graders have cell phones. So, and I think it's a safety thing. As a parent myself, we're trying to make sure we can keep tabs with our children. But on the same note, once we hand our children that cell phone, boy, they're smart. All right? And it just opens up a whole ball of wax, if you will, if you don't sit there and really communicate with your kids. Because if you don't tell them, they're going to figure it out. And again, we go from safety as a parent to now it opens up to, they're on the internet talking to someone. You can be anywhere on the internet,
Any other comments? Okay. The next question, what is sexting? Barrett?
I think we're probably all pretty familiar with the term. I think in its most basic definition, it's sending sexually explicit messages or photographs via text messaging, which I guess I've never sent a text in my life. I don't believe that. I guess it's different than email, though. I don't know, maybe some other people can comment in on that, but in some of the rumblings I've heard from some fellow colleagues and attorneys in the state, it's becoming more and more pervasive in our schools. What you hear on the news or WMUR is really just the tip of the iceberg. For every news article that makes the paper or the television, rest assured that there are many, many more actually going on statewide.
Other thoughts?
I know for law enforcement, we've dealt with this sexting. I guess I look back when most of us in this room were in school. If somebody was, if you will, promiscuous, 20 years later, they still think of that person. Sexting, when you push that button, you think it's going out to, your buddy. Well, next thing you know, your buddy sends it to his buddy, and it is out there, and it's just floating out there. And again, we've dealt with it in Henniker. I know there's other surrounding communities, other law enforcement officers that I've spoken to that have dealt with it. It is a huge deal. It really is. And unfortunately, it's difficult because the kids being at such a young age, they're very naive, or they don't have the life skills or life experience. So when they push the button, I don't think they really understand the ramifications, not only the next day in school, but literally something that could affect them 20 years down the road, that their photo is still out there. And I've seen it. It's a big issue.
And just to follow up on that, in terms of developmental issues with these middle school kids, they're very vulnerable to peer pressure. And, they just want to be accepted and liked. And there's, so if you have a girl who really wants a boy to like her, and then he might say, oh, please send me a picture of you. And then he says, oh, I promise I won't show anyone. And then she sends a picture, and it can go to anybody. Officer Martin said, it doesn't just go to him. He sends it to all his buddies, and they send it to all their buddies, and and she didn't realize what a big mistake she was making.
It also can go from the phone to the internet very quickly now. You can send a picture to the internet just with a click of your phone. And once something is on the internet, we know it's saved into an image, and finding where it originated is impossible, and deleting it is also impossible. So the privacy of that quick send of that image, it's not a private thing.
Anything else on that topic? Okay. I just want to remind the audience at home, if you have questions and you would like to call in, the number is 529-7555, and that question will be delivered to me, and I can read it on the air. Going back to our questions that were pre-developed, the next question is, what should a parent look for as signs that a child is involved in cyberbullying? Vicki?
Well, Karen had talked about this earlier, whereas if you're walking by the computer and your child, turns things off, they obviously, don't want you to see what they've been doing. The other thing is that the studies that I've read indicate that children who have been bullied, you may notice them withdrawing socially. They have more school absences than children who have not been bullied. Their grades may go down. They may, say they're sick and don't want to go to school, and you're not quite sure why. Those are indications of cyberbullying, could be. And I think that, having good communication with your children and letting them know that it's okay to tell you if anything's happened and talk about it before it happens, so that they're more likely to share with you.
Anyone else?
One of the pieces of information that I read was that very often victims of the typical schoolyard bullying quickly become cyber bullies because it's a lot easier for them to retaliate to their bullies who are bullying them out in the schoolyard because they're feeling safe, they're feeling protected, they're in their homes or in some other area where they're not facing that person. And they're doing the bullying through the different computers and cell phones, feeling that they are more protected than facing that bully in the schoolyard or out in the playground.
Anyone else on the panel have anything to add to that question? The next one says, how is cyberbullying different from traditional playground bullying? Eric?
I think you just touched on it. I mean, the anonymity really allows students to, say what they want, post what they want behind either a username or a screen name. I know some of the court cases that I'm familiar with, the behavior and the postings is graphic, filled with violence and sex and all sorts of things that, were stunned a 14-year-old kid could come up with and post. And obviously, these were done without parental knowledge, which is, we touched on that a little bit, but it's astounding, to be honest with you, some of the things that the kids are able to put together. But I think the anonymity is obviously the big factor, being able to sit from, your own bedroom and post these things and tell the world what you're thinking about your other classmates.
The bully also doesn't have the benefit of seeing the response, and I think that just sort of allows them to take bullying to new heights, because they're not, you don't have that, you don't have as much empathy or compassion for the person because you don't see their response. So if there was anything to hold the bully back from really, saying whatever they want and saying whatever mean and horrible things they'd like to say, that's not there on the internet. They're just typing it into the computer and see the person. So.
One more thing to add too. I think to go along with the anonymity aspect, if there's a bully on the playground, well, they can be rest assured that a teacher or some supervisor is going to come and stop the behavior. If you're at home, you can do it as long as you want to. There's nobody there to stop you. So one other factor, I think, that is a significant difference between physical bullying and cyberbullying.
Anyone else? Okay. Moving to our next question. How do I give my child the privacy and independence they want while also protecting them? Karen or Jess?
I think in that you have to really be able to talk with your child about the fact that safety outweighs privacy, that you will be giving the privacy as long as you feel that what your child is doing is 100% safe. And as soon as you see signs that you think that they are getting involved in something that is unsafe, then that becomes your job to get involved and make sure that you're keeping your child safe. And if they know that up front, then they're going to know ahead of time how they're going to be able to keep their privacy by knowing that they need to stay in safe areas on the computer and make sure that they're doing things that are safe and not putting them in danger at all.
Also, explaining what the risks are is a very important thing to do with your child, making sure that they understand really that anyone can be anybody on the computer and that they're not always who you think they are, and that letting them know that what the concern is and the reason for why you would need to check the history, why you would want to have the conversations, and why you'd want it in plain view.
Anyone else on that?
One more. I know Karen just touched on it, but again, you can be anyone on the computer. When we initially started this whole program, we had a definition of cyberbullying, and I added to it that it needs to be like two teenagers, both peers. But, you know, there are predators out there that say that they're a 13-year-old child. So, again, it's very, very important for safety. There's no question outweighs threats.
Okay. The next question that I have is, what should I do if I discover my child is involved? Barrett?
A whole host of things. Obviously, parental response would differ when you say involved. Is your child the bully or is your child the victim? If your child's the victim, I think you need to contact a host of people. You need to contact the school. You should contact law enforcement. Contact your internet service provider to see if they're able to trace this back to where the email came from or where the text message came from. Look at different plans that your internet or your phone provider can provide, and the overarching theme here seems to be talk to your children about this and be upfront and be honest with them, and in a manner that is going to set down some boundaries and recognize that there's still going to be some privacy issues to work out, but safety is the main concern. But I think as a parent myself, if I realized that my child was a victim of cyberbullying and we were able to ascertain that it was a classmate, I'd certainly contact the school and see what they could do about it.
Anyone else to add to that?
We read one of these packets here. There's sort of 3 first steps. Don't respond, don't erase, and save everything you can. Especially if it's an instant message. It's very hard to save those, but you can print them when they happen. So.
Thanks for those responses. And continuing with the next question on my list, how can I talk to my child about cyberbullying?
I think it's important, first of all, anytime you're going to have a conversation with your child, you might want to do a little research ahead of time to find out what's age appropriate. Most certainly with teenagers, Frontline did a wonderful special a couple of weeks ago, and I often find with my own children one of the good ways to kind of start a conversation is to view something like that segment as a family, and most certainly talk about it, ask if they've been a part of it, ask if they know anybody that's been a part of it, talk about how it makes people feel, talk about the legal ramifications. They have McGruff, the crime dog, has some wonderful little segments online that I was checking out today. If your children tend to be a little bit, younger, sometimes that animated approach helps hook them in as well. But again, you need to always, remember that children of any age can be a victim as easily as they can be an offender. And educating early, conversations early. Again, as educators, we cannot impress on families enough. Be involved, communicate. Those are the 2 best ways to start that conversation with your children.
And start it at a young age. Don't wait until they're 9 or 10 and a victim of it. Start communicating with them at a young age so that they're comfortable coming to you when something happens.
Okay. Chief, I'm going to address this next question to you. How do we convince our children that this is serious and not a joke?
I think what Tina was saying as far as some of the, and the research, I was looking at the sexting today, and they're talking about kids in Utah and an 18-year-old that killed herself because she or an ex-boyfriend had passed on pictures of her to some of the other people in the school. Get to know those facts and let your children realize that this isn't just like, I think Barrett was saying, MUR hits the tip of the iceberg in one or two schools, and it really doesn't get to the kids. They tend to say, well, that's not my school. WMUR had it in whatever the community is. Just because they're identifying that school or that community does not mean that it's not a national issue or a New Hampshire issue or a Weare or Henniker issue. It's happening everywhere. And they need to realize that. And they need to realize that those kids are the same as the kids here in Weare. So it will affect them, and it isn't a joke. And if we have to get involved, there are crimes that are violated, and as they get older, they can be very serious consequences for those things, let alone the issues of them being out there forever. The immediate legal consequence could affect them, again, forever when they try to get school loans, when they try to get jobs, because a lot of employers now are looking at Facebooks and they start seeing even simply children on Facebook in college drinking beers. Is that somebody that you want to employ? So it can be long-lasting, and those are the things that the parents need to let the children know.
Any additional comments from the panel on that particular question?
Actually, I didn't think I was going to answer this question, but as I was listening to you guys, I thought if you were to almost allow your child to understand really what is going on, and almost like bringing your child to a very, very public place, like a post office or something, and say, hey, I've got this picture of you. It's a little revealing. I'm going to post it right up here, and watch them be mortified. Of course we wouldn't do that. And that's just a very, very, very fraction of what they're doing when they put it on the Internet. Or when they communicate with anybody, anyone can see it, especially if it's on a networking site. Almost kind of creating that visual for them might help them understand that there is a safety risk. So.
Okay. Continuing, next question on my list of pre-developed questions is, how should parents deal with Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, blogging, IME? I have Barrett, Jess, and Karen as potential people who would like to answer that question.
I'm going to pass the
I can just start. Really just knowing the ins and outs of each of those. I'm not familiar with some of them, but knowing them ahead of time before your kids use it, knowing who can see the pages, how they post information, it was so helpful so that when you do have conversations with them, you know what's going on. So really just knowing the programs before they use it is the best thing.
And also knowing that those programs are really designed to entice your child to communicate with people. And it opens it up to them communicating with the world.
Especially with MySpace and Facebook. And again, I don't know some of the others, but there's almost a feeling of a competition. How many friends can I have in my section? And if I've got 500 friends, I only may know 100 of them, but that feels popular. And you're advertising that you have so many friends. And it can entice kids to want to become friends with people that they don't know. And it's very easy. It's one click.
Parents can check to see if the child actually knows everybody on their buddy list.
Yeah. Sorry, one more thing. I also check both Facebooks and MySpaces. Sometimes someone will set up a parent-friendly Facebook or MySpace and then have a second one somewhere else. So that knowing the history of the computer will help a lot. So.
And I'd just like to add one thing, that when you talk about cyberbullying, these are the spaces where a lot of the cyberbullying, especially at the high school, that's the level I'm most familiar with. This is where a lot of that cyberbullying originates from, is excluding certain people from your Facebook or your MySpace, or writing something in your away message that is very derogatory towards another person. And you get your 5 friends to all put the same away message. And a lot of the cyberbullying that we deal with at the high school has originated from Facebook and MySpace sites. And my first comment that I make to parents and children when they come in is, why is this taking place of, and I hate to use the term, but, play dates or slumber parties or sleepovers where kids are getting the nurturing and the one-on-one in a parent-friendly environment. And I just find that in this generation, it's easier to let our kids get on Facebook or MySpace than to try to organize some of that, FaceTime with our children and their friends. And as parents, I'm finding that they don't know their children's friends. I mean, I get parents calling saying, oh, well, they were with, this person or that person, but I don't know their last name. And that's just very different than my generation, where my parents could tell you everything about, the friends I was involved with. So that's just another piece to keep in mind.
I'd like to actually give you my own personal experience. I don't like Facebook, but this is why. I was invited actually, and I'm not a computer person per se or whatever, but I was invited by a friend of mine, which is my buddy's wife, said, oh, be a friend of mine on Facebook. And I was like, well, I don't like Facebook. I don't trust it because, again, I don't know really that much about it. Well, I went on, and it's very brief. It only takes you a couple minutes to log on. Well, as I answer the questions, next thing I know, I've got all these people just came up on the screen that I knew. Well, they ended up being the people that were on my email addresses that were also on Facebook. It was just automatic. It came right up. And I kind of looked at it, and I'm looking at faces of my friends. I have an issue with that because I guess if you're on Facebook and you have someone in your face, obviously Facebook, and you're on there, well, and it might be, one of them, it was my niece, and she's in college, and I lost it. I mean, I called her, I said, get your face off of Facebook, because I don't know anyone in this room, maybe some of the older fellas or older people in here still use a phone book. Most people don't use a phone book anymore. They go on the computer and they type in Michael Mark, whatever it is, all right? And you can literally get on, you're saying, oh, and my niece could be a model. And you go, oh, geez, you know what, Lindsay Martin, type on, it will literally get you to her doorstep. Okay, it will literally put the house, and it's that simple, folks, do it. You put your name in on the computer and you want an address, and it will put to literally your address to your front door. Now, if you have children that are on Facebook and their actual photo of them, it might be a beach photo, it might be something with their girlfriends or their buddies at the football game, whatever it may be, someone can find you like that. And so I made a couple phone calls, and fortunately now there's a sandal on there. Well, you know what? A sandal is better than a picture of my niece, and she's off to college, what have you. So anyway, that was my issue. And again, to add to it, there was like 57 names that came up, and I'm like, I don't know these people. I'm like, what? Well, it was her friends that came up. I mean, it explodes. So when it says that, and her excuse was, well, how come I'm in college and it's protected? I'm like, how can it be protected? I just found you and I wasn't even trying. All right, so now I can literally click on to her friend, who I have no idea, and then it goes to her friend. Well, she might have 50 friends, and then it goes to, and it's phenomenal. It is huge, and try it. You'll see how easy it is. So that's just my own personal experience. So.
Okay.
Come on back, Jeff.
Okay. With Facebook, it sort of invites you to write down what you're doing at that moment, and I believe Twitter is the same way, but I don't know much about Twitter, so I'm just going to talk about Facebook. And so, you could be going to the park. I'm on my way to the park. I'm running to the store. You might actually not post anything about your name or where you live, but the pictures that are posted and what you say for what you're doing can give someone enough information to find you, and that could be anybody. And so just as a thought there for anybody.
Next question is going to be for our attorney. What are the responsibilities of schools when cyberbullying happens outside of school?
This is still a very gray area in the law. Fortunately, I think more courts are coming around recognizing the seriousness and the pervasiveness of this problem nationwide. So, especially in post-Columbine times, and with increased issues of sexting and photographs of underage girls and whatnot, I think courts are becoming more and more lenient and more respectful of the decisions made at the local level by local school administrators who are most familiar with the facts of the situation and are dealing with the bullying and dealing with the actual children. The first thing that a school district needs to do, it starts with the school board actually, is to have a policy in place putting parents and students on notice that cyberbullying is a violation of school rules. Now, I understand that there are going to be arguments on either side of that. The parent of the victim is going to say, yes, absolutely, the school has an obligation to provide a safe school for my child to attend free of bullying and harassment. And on the other side, we're going to have the parent of the bully who's going to say, wait a minute, this is purely private behavior off of school grounds. You didn't use school computers. You have no right to limit this behavior. That's not happening on school grounds. My personal take as an attorney representing school boards and school districts across the state is that if a school district knows or has reason to believe that a particular student is committing cyberbullying offenses and it's having a negative impact on certain students inside that school, the school district probably has an obligation to respond in some manner. Whether that's an investigation, whether that's disciplining students for violation of school policies and school codes, that can be left up to local school districts. But once a school district gains knowledge that one of its students is potentially in danger while on school grounds, the school district has an obligation to at least look into it. The language that is pretty pertinent to allow school districts to sort of start the investigation process is language from a famous court case that some of you may know, Tinker v. Des Moines, which was the Vietnam case. Students in Iowa back in 1968 or 1969 wore a black armband to protest the Vietnam War, and they were suspended and disciplined by their local school district, and the case went up to the Supreme Court. And the United States Supreme Court used a language that if students are engaging in speech or behavior that causes a substantial disruption to the school district's goals, operations, or beliefs, then the school district generally has a right to impose some sort of discipline. So I encourage, not just the districts in SAU 24, but in my job with a statewide organization, all school districts to look at their local school district policies and put in language. I can read it for you, actually. This is the sample policy that I drafted a couple years ago and recommend to school districts. The board may impose disciplinary measures against persons who is found to have engaged in such behavior, provided the cyberbullying and/or internet threats, 1, violate any school district rules or regulations, 2, contains threats of violence against staff members or students, 3, threatens vandalism to school property, 4, suggests or advocates physical harm to staff or students, 5, creates a disruption to the school's educational mission, purpose, and objectives, or 6, interrupts or severely impedes the day-to-day operations of the school. So not to belabor the point, but if the bullying in the particular instances are becoming pervasive enough where they're causing a substantial disruption within the school, I think the school certainly has the right to intervene and impose discipline, and at times may even have an obligation to do so.
Chief? And I was just going back to something I think Jess had said earlier. The cyberbully is the person that could be bullied on the playground, think of what that happens now. The cyberbully's home texting or emailing the bully, and now that turns around and where are they back together again the next day? It's going to be here on the school grounds. So it certainly is something that may start outside, but chances of it coming inside the school property are huge.
Any other thoughts on that question?
I'm very fortunate because I work with wonderful kids, and they're very honest and upfront most of the time. And there have been at least 3 situations in the last 5 years where I was aware of something. So obviously, I'm not aware of much because the data tells me otherwise. And really, it was I felt as though I was in a very gray area because it was 100% done outside of the school. But my thought was, if they're telling me, they need help. And that was where, and really just contacting the parents was enough to be able to solve those situations as far as I know. And in each of those 3 cases, the parents were not happy to hear what happened, but happy to be involved in what happened so that they could solve it. So.
Okay. Staying with school administration, when can school officials intervene and what types of actions can they take around cyberbullying?
I think I may have covered that a little bit in my answer. If it's obviously if the bullying is being done in school on school computers or during school hours on campus, obviously the district has a right to step in and impose discipline in line with its traditional policies. The gray areas again when it's purely private behavior, but as the chief chimed in, how private is it? Because we know it's going to get back to school. We know that the argument is going to ensue either in the cafeteria or on the playground, or the kids are going to be chattering about it. So, in those situations, it actually helps everybody out when it comes into school. Then, because then we can become more aware of it and engage in conversations like this that community-wide help parents understand the issue and help administrators formulate some ideas on how to handle it.
And I know the school and we, and I'm sure Mike and Henniker Police are the same way. We would much rather deal with it when it's small and it's just calling the parents. If we have to, mediating with the parents to get the communication going so that it doesn't become a larger, more serious issue than to wait until it explodes and we have something that's tragic. Whether it be just between 2 families or worse. So anytime the communication gets back to us, the first thing we try to do is handle it in the smallest way possible, which would be with the families involved.
I have a few more questions on my list, but I just want to remind the audience at home, if you do have a question, you can call in at 529-7555, and they'll get that question to me, and hopefully the panel can answer your question. With that said, the next question that I have, how can schools manage cyberbullying by cell phone?
Well, I think by whatever the school has developed as a policy for either cell phone usage or exclusion from the schools, what we do run into is that after-school safety factor where there are a lot of parents who are both working full-time and they want their child to have their cell phone after school with them so that they can be in contact with them. Our current policy at our school is that cell phones are not allowed, that if parents have a compelling reason for their child to have a cell phone, they can write a letter to the administration requesting permission for their child to have that cell phone, and it should remain off and in their backpack or in their locker for the day and not be used until they are off school grounds after school. But we all know that we've got children who are using cell phones during the school day, so we confiscate them if they're being used during the school day because they're obviously interrupting the educational aspect of school if they're using cell phones. and keep them and contact the parents and have the parents come and get the cell phones. Henniker is currently we have had a request by some 8th graders in a very polite and respectful letter that they wrote asking for permission to try to transition from being 8th graders at Henniker to following the policy that the high school has where they can have them, but they have to be turned off and put away for the day. And that request went to the team level to try to make a decision on that.
And I understand even at the high school, we struggle. I mean, God loves parents, but I've taken cell phones away and actually had long conversations with parents on the other end of the phone who were upset because they needed to get a hold of their child and called in the middle of a class. And it is, it is a scary age. Cell phones are wonderful because parents, can get a hold of their kids when they need to. But again, it's so important that parents support the schools, that you support our policies, that there's a reason we don't want cell phones there. We're not trying to limit your communication with your child. Please call the school. We'll page them out of class. You can talk to them through our phone lines. But it is difficult, especially at the high school, because kids are old enough to buy their own and get their own plans, and we struggle with. They always say that they have a right to privacy and they have a right to property, and it's always a conversation, a negotiation. I say that your rights stop the minute you violate someone else's. So that is an educated process at the high school as well.
At the middle school in Weare, we have a very similar procedure, as Karen pointed out. However, the only difference is that we don't say that you can't have it because we wouldn't know if you have it. If we can see it or if we can hear it, we'll take it and confiscate it. And it's really not because we're trying to take away this really nifty, neat thing that they can have. It's really because of there's been a lot of research done about how kids are taking pictures with their phones of tests and sending it to many different other kids who are then getting the answers. That's going back and forth. Also, just what we've talked about today is a big reason, obviously, not to have the cell phones in school. And it becomes very difficult to manage it once we start letting it happen. However, we have to be mindful that technology is here. And it's not something that we should fight. It's something that we should welcome. But we're at the point now where we need to carefully consider how we would do that. So.
Any other comments on?
I guess in defense of the schools, 95% of us can probably remember when we didn't have cell phones. Mm-hmm. And when we had to get a hold of my folks had to get a hold of me, they called the school. And the staff member came down and interrupted the class, asked me to step out. It's not a safety issue. They're in school. Mm-hmm. If they need to get out, if mom or dad are sick or something happens, call the school.
Yeah. Good. I think some of the part of the next question has been answered, but I'll ask it. How do we get parents to understand why we have school rules about cell phones? Any additional comments?
Well, I think it's important to add too. Kids do movies. And at the high school, we had an incident where there was a movie taken with a violent incident, and within 5 minutes, everyone had gotten that video to their phone. And we were very busy for 3 days, pulling people in and communicating with them. We were able to locate the individual that originally had taped the altercation and posted it to YouTube. But each student that opened it and viewed it was guilty of cyberbullying. And those were very hard conversations to have with folks because they said, well, my child didn't solicit it. It just showed up on their phone. But yet they watched it. And watching another human being be, beaten up is a form of bullying as well. So it's very important to understand it. And I agree with Jess that technology is here. And when used appropriately, it's a wonderful tool. But I felt bad for the student who, was plastered on YouTube. He didn't have a right. His rights were taken from him when that was posted on YouTube.
I think also developmentally for middle school, children really don't understand rights and responsibilities. It's our job to teach them that. And we look at anything that happens with a cell phone as an opportunity to be able to teach them. But we're giving them tools that are really tempting, that are a status symbol for them to have, and it's very difficult for them to make that good choice because they don't fully understand the results of what will happen.
I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but for that instance, if that's an assault. So an assault took place, and let's say it was between Chief and I, right? Well, next thing you know, we text it to all of you. Now you're witnesses. You're involved in the assault. So I mean, essentially, you could be just for opening that up. You could need to be interviewed. And say, do you recognize these two people? You know, what was your take on it? How did you get this information? I mean, boy, it can really open up a mess.
We've had a recent rise in innocent issues where a student isn't feeling well, and they legitimately are not feeling well, and they'll go into the restroom and text or call their parent. And the problem with that is that our school nurse isn't aware of the situation and couldn't have helped the student. And so the parent will come in and say, I'm here to pick up my son or daughter, and we have no idea what's going on. And then if the student was to get sick, no one would be there to help. So we do encourage parents, if that does happen, that they need to remember to tell, if your child calls you, say, please go to the nurse, and they'll call me. And we've just been having a recent rise in that. So just a little statement.
That's another issue I've heard of going on statewide as well. The student either texting or calling the parent saying, I'm sick, come pick me up, and next thing you know, the parent's at the door saying, where's my kid? And the principal hasn't heard about it, the school nurse hasn't heard about it, nobody knows, and suddenly the parent's at the door. So it's again, it's another issue that's not local. I've heard numerous instances of that going on statewide as well.
Okay. Next one's for legal counsel also. Can school staff check phone text messages on students' cell phones to confirm or disprove that bullying has happened during the school hours?
I would recommend that they don't. I'm not aware of any court cases, a parent or a student suing a school district for an invasion of privacy and something like that. I think it would probably be outside the scope or the bounds of a traditional search that school administrators are allowed to conduct. Presumably, they could confiscate the phone and hold it, and if they have, a legitimate basis for believing there may be illegal activity, a nude photograph, pictures of underage drinking, they may be able to turn the phone over to law enforcement, but any school district staff checking the contents of a cell phone and manipulating it to find out information in there, I certainly wouldn't recommend.
See, maybe we'll talk after.
I would probable cause.
Yes, I would.
Right.
And I look back to TLO and say if they can search a purse to find cigarettes, then if this is disrupting the educational process of what's going on in the school, then they should be able to look at the phone just like they would like to be able to look into a pocketbook.
And as I'm sure you know, TLO, the scope also has to be reasonably related in scope to what you're looking for. So if you think the kid has cigarettes, you can look in a purse because cigarettes are going to be held in the purse. If you think something's going on with a text phone, manipulating it to try and find what was said, that may be the next Supreme Court case.
Come on away.
You have a tougher standard, absolutely. But
and I just look at the intent behind TLO and the environment that the kids are being taught in. What more impact would there be than to be able to see that there was, if you've got reasonable suspicion that cyberbullying is going on, that's the tool. Right. And that's why I was surprised. I thought for sure you were going to go the other way. You woke me up.
If I can clarify for the audience and the people at home, TLO, the case that Chief and I were discussing, is a A case from the United States Supreme Court in the mid-'80s, 84, 85, 86, that really laid out the standard for which school district officials and administrators are allowed to search a student, search their locker, search their purse, search their body for contraband, drugs, guns, whatnot. It's an easier standard than what the police have to do. As I'm sure most of you know, police need probable cause to conduct a search. School administrators only need reasonable suspicion to search, again, a student's backpack, locker, or person, which is a lower standard of scrutiny than what the police would need.
Dr. Joe?
I just want to know what TLO was.
Oh.
We have a question from the audience. Are the schools discussing cyberbullying with kids? If so, how and at what age does it start?
I can answer that if that's we spend a lot of time in our guidance curriculum talking about bullying in general. Last few years, we've recently brought in cyberbullying. However, I see the need to do it in a more broader and more frequent scope. We have Wildcat chats. Right now we've got about four a year that talk about issues that really are concerning to students. Right now the chat that's happening this Friday is what's tattling and what's telling and when is it okay to tell somebody. And we included some information there about some cyberbullying. But I'd like to see more because I think that more kids will come and ask for help if they know that we're ready to hear it. So.
And this will be my plug because I was going to get to Jess for the fall. We teach the DARE program here in 5th and 7th grade also. And part of the added curriculum, if you will, is both 5th and 7th grade are 10-week programs, but both have a 2-week bullying addition that you can go. So if you go 12 weeks, you can put in the 2 weeks of bullying. So this will be my plug, and we'll talk about it in the fall, to put the 2 weeks in for the 5th grade and the 7th grade also. And part of that has a component in cyberbullying.
Anything else with that? Okay. Another one from the audience. How do I check who is on my child's Facebook or MySpace, and how do I find out if there are multiple sites that they have?
Brian Grattan is going to be holding a parent night on, I think it's May 21st at 6 o'clock, where he can walk you through, probably not on our computers because they're blocked, but walk you through what to do. But knowing how to get into the history of the computer is probably the most important thing you could learn, and knowing that your child can delete it from the side panel whenever they'd like, but that there's another way to get to it is very important. If your computer is in a central location and you walk by and they're on Facebook or MySpace, pull up a chair, tell them you're really, really interested and can't wait to learn more about it, and maybe you want one, and they can't wait to show you about it. And that can begin there. The hope is that it would begin before they have one, but obviously we tend to find out afterwards. So.
I think the key is to communicate, even like Jess just said, communicate with them before so that you're in the process from the beginning. Will make it a lot easier.
I know these websites have tried to help school administrators and parents by setting up, a user guide for parents. And so if you log on to Facebook, you search around, you can find, guides and information for parents whose children have Facebook accounts that I haven't had a chance to look at it or opportunity to look at it, but I imagine it's pretty helpful. And if you contact the website itself and say, I have a 12-year-old child who just got a Facebook account, tell me what I need to do to protect my child's privacy and interests. I know these websites have been faced with some litigation in response to cyberbullying and whatnot, so they put up their own stopgaps and sort of safety measures for parents. So always go directly to the website and see what it is, and ask the people that run the website itself.
Also, if you do find something on either of those sites, there is a section on both of them that's very user-friendly where you can report something. It's just one click away for you to report if you see anything that's going on, too.
Another question from the audience. Is the school responsible to help if bullying is at home? If so, why? And how would a parent report it?
I think from the school's perspective, when bullying is going on anywhere outside of school, we tend to see the ramifications back in school because of the social piece of that. And our response to that is really in helping the victim to be able to deal with what's going on and helping the bully understand by educating them the ramifications of being the bully.
In the cases that I mentioned earlier, what's difficult is that you may only have half of the puzzle because you don't know who the other half is. So there have been times where a student might come in and say, this is going on to me, but I think the other person is in high school, or I think the other person might be from Henniker, or I think the other person might not somebody that you can actually meet with at that time because they're not actually in the building. That's when it gets a little complicated.
The next question on the list that was given to me to start tonight. How should I respond if I discover my child has received unsolicited sexual messages or images?
Call the police. I mean, it's that simple, and we can do what we can. Again, the World Wide Web is a wonderful thing, but trying to track down IP addresses a lot of times is simply impossible. But you can check with your local law enforcement. You can also check with the service provider to find out where it's coming from to document with them that this IP address is sending you these messages. And again, it's going to be, and I keep falling back to my son and I watch NCIS all the time. It's not going to be as easy as the NCIS people or the CSI people. You know, they're going to plug it into a computer and it's going to ping, 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 ping all around the world and come back and bang, there it is. Sometimes those things take months, so you never find it. It's not 2 minutes like you see on TV.
To add to that, first and foremost, don't panic. The first, I guess, the last thing you want to do is be accusatory to your child. I mean, if they feel comfortable enough to be able to come to you and show you this issue, that's huge in itself. Well, if you start accusing them of what did you do, why did you send, they're going to shut right down. You're going to be done. There's actually a really cool website it's pretty easy to walk through. It's www.stopcyberbullying.org, and there's a link for law enforcement. And again, if you ultimately come to us, see us for help, there's several questions that we can ask, right, for your child. And you know what? And again, talk to your child and make sure that they're safe. I mean, there's a reason why, or there may not be a reason why, that they may be totally innocent. Next thing you know, it's 10 people removed that got sent to their phone. And again, safety is a huge issue because that picture may have came from another state. I mean, you just don't know.
Can you say that address again?
It's www.cyberbullying.org. Oh, I'm sorry, stopcyberbullying.org.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. The next question. What are the consequences of inappropriate use of cell phone, email, and websites? And I guess we'll look at schools. Mm-hmm. If there's inappropriate use of any one of those three things, what's the consequences?
Well, it would be a violation of our acceptable use policy, and that is something that all students receive at the beginning of the year, and they actually have to sign it. And all the adults in our building also are held to the same standard and have to sign it. If it's a, I guess I'll say mild violation of our acceptable use policy, it doesn't actually constitute cyberbullying or harassment or sexting. What we would do is we would actually take away their internet privileges, and then we've created what's called an acceptable use test and they actually have to study during their lunch and recess time and pass the test in order to get it back on. That's obviously for the mild, low ones. But for things that are much more serious, we would obviously turn to our procedure manual for bullying, harassment. We'd follow the same procedures that are set out, whether it's cyberbullying or regular bullying, if it's inside the school.
And Henniker has all the same policies that Weare does, but I do like the idea of the test for the people who are violating the acceptable use policy, and we'll have to develop one soon.
I'll give you as well.
Okay.
I don't think that you meant it this way, but there are some significant psychological consequences that can result from cyberbullying. I mean, we have heard of, in the news, you've heard of several suicides where children have been bullied and felt so harassed and alone and rejected that they took their own lives. But I think that the reason that this kind of bullying is more significant than playground bullying is because it invades the child's place of safety. So their home, which was often a safe haven, isn't that way anymore because, you know, that's where they're getting bullied a lot of the times. And because of the anonymity, so they don't know who it is. So they come to school and, you know, if Joey bullied me on the playground, I know who Joey is. I can see him. I can stay away from Joey. But I'm bullied, you know, on my computer, or I'm texted by someone, and I don't know who that is. It could be anybody at school. So now I don't know who's safe and who's not safe. And sometimes it can feel like nobody's safe because everybody seems to be involved in rejecting me or bullying me. And so, and then if kids feel like they can't tell their parents, then, you know, for whatever reason they're afraid they're going to get kicked off the computer or whatever, then they really feel alone. So I think there are very more significant psychological consequences to this sort of bullying than the old-fashioned kind of bullying on the playground.
How about from law enforcement's point of view around illegal use of cell phones, emails, or websites? What are the consequences?
I mean, it would fall under the statutes that we currently have under harassment or criminal threatening, and obviously child pornography. That's the big thing with the sexting now, is that's child pornography, depending on who gets it and who looks at it. And looking at child pornography, you are both federal and state, you could be charged with child pornography.
I think so. I think, and bottom line, words hurt. I mean, they can really be damaging. And again, as Chief said, age, depending on what age you're at, and depending on how you're sending it or receiving it, there could be several different ramifications from not to throw it up from a 10-year-old to a 17-year-old. It's a big difference.
I have another question from the audience. My child was asked to send a nude picture to someone he or she had met once. He or she told me about it. I wanted to tell the other child's parent. My child did not want me to be a tattletale. Who's right?
Oh, what a difficult parenting question.
My hat's off to that child.
Yep.
To do that.
Yes. And to the parent for establishing that relationship.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I'm going to try to answer this question. It's a very, very difficult situation. But I have to assume that the child who brought this forward is a child that's looking for some help, even if it's just someone to talk to, and yay that you went to a parent. But I personally have not handled very many of these, but I'm aware of them because of conversations I hear from past students, from parents. And my feeling is that whoever sent that to your son or your daughter sent it to probably many, many, many others. And there are many, many other parents wondering the exact same thing. And if you talk to your child about that you're doing it for their safety in the long run, and then you move forward with it, whether it's the police or whether it's the parent, I do think it'll help solve the problem. But again, it's more of a moral issue.
It is a moral issue, but you also need to be cautious that depending upon how persistent this other student is, will it turn into a bullying situation? Will they take no for an answer? And again, not knowing the student, not knowing the student's family, that's a difficult proposition to put your child in. Are they strong enough to say no, and will there be repercussions if you don't intervene? And that it's a risky situation to sit back and watch.
It is hard when you're coming at it from the perspective of being a parent. From the perspective of schools, I know that when I have called the parent of the bully and explained the behavior that has happened, the parents, for the most part, welcome knowing what their child is doing and really ask good questions about, how should I respond to this? What level of consequence should I give? For the most part, that's what I'm finding when I'm talking with parents. So I think parents out there are interested in knowing that these things are happening and wanting to know how to help make it stop.
Victims of bullying often don't want to tell because they fear retaliation. But really, I think that bullies tend to pick victims whom they think won't tell. So I would vote for telling the parent, or at least telling somebody. That would be my vote.
And I'd like to add that when I'm teaching DARE, I try to tell the students that it's not tattling if you're helping somebody. And in this case, there are people that need help. So it's not in the definition of tattling. Tattling is telling that Johnny had 3 cookies instead of 2. If somebody's in need of help, they need to come forward like they did, and then we need to continue the process to make sure that that person gets the help. Just telling mom or dad and then letting it die there isn't giving the child the help that they need. Either one of them, the bully or the one that's being bullied. So I try to impress on the kids that there's a difference between tattling and helping.
Yeah.
And in this situation, we need to continue so that the people that need the help can get the help.
Also, I guess the mom or dad really need to make sure, even though it's, let's say, my phone, and it came from Mike's phone, so it must be Mike. That doesn't necessarily mean it was Mike that actually sent the message. Okay, Mike I may have had a couple of friends over or whatever, all right, and I went upstairs to my room to go change my clothes, and it might be my buddy. So again, you need to really, really make sure that you know who you're talking to or what parent that you want to approach, because you don't know. And you can see how easily it can just get misconstrued.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the audience before we wrap it up? I'd ask the panel for any final thoughts or comments they'd like to add.
I do want to let all the parents know how much we appreciate what you do at home. I did ask all of the students who are on these sites, do your parents talk to you? Do you, is the history being checked? And yes, it is happening, and it's the data shows that the more you talk to them, even our data, just our school data, the more that you talk to them and the more that you're checking the history, the less likely it is to occur. So I just thank you for your help.
I'll do it generic. I was writing notes down as we were talking. This is a concern for the community, and the community certainly includes neighbors, schools, the police department. But combating this problem needs to start at home with the parents. And it sounds like our parents are being diligent with their children. Keep that up. Know what they're doing. Know who they're with, whether it be at home, or not necessarily at home, but at a friend's house or on the internet, know where they are on the internet, and just continue to be diligent. And we can do this as a community and get through this and tackle the next technology issue that comes up the way we will this one.
I want to thank the audience for coming out tonight and being part of this. I also want to thank everybody at home for spending time with us for about the last hour talking about cyberbullying. I also want to let you know that this has been videotaped and will be able to be rebroadcasted at a later time, and we will keep you posted when that may happen to keep people up to speed with, again, the opportunity to get this message out to as many people as possible. I'd just like to thank Jess Potter, Assistant Principal at Weare Middle School, Karen Raymond, Assistant Principal at Henniker Community School, Officer Mike Martin, Police Officer in Henniker, Chief Greg Began, Weare Police Department, Barrett Christina, Staff Attorney for the New Hampshire School Board Association, Vicki Mikulski, School Psychologist at Henniker Community School, and Tina Tangway, our Assistant Principal at John Stark, for your efforts tonight in answering some of these very tough questions. And we greatly appreciate the information that you're able to share with us. So thank you very much. Again, just one other note, because I have the TV and I also have some parents tonight. Over the next couple of days, you will be receiving a bus survey. Please take the time to fill it out and send it back in. It is very important as we move forward for next year that we have the correct ridership data for our buses. So if you could take the time and send that back, you should be receiving it either, you may have received it today, or you'll be receiving it tomorrow, and it needs to be back by May 8th. So please take the time to send that back. It will really help us in making the determination on how we will bus our students to school next year. So I thank you very much. I thank the panel, I thank the audience, and everybody have a great evening. Thank you.